Jobtopia Nation. I don't know where I've heard that. I just kind of like it. But I'll tell you what, I even have a special little banner made for us today. Look at this. The golden era of America, the revival of U.S. manufacturing. I'll tell you what, they say, look, you shouldn't be political. I say, look, we have to face the facts. What's happening right now is an attempt to bring manufacturing back to America. And I, for one, I'm here for it because I've seen too many small towns dry up and go away because the manufacturing base leaves. And, you know, as manufacturing comes back, we open up lots of other opportunities for people all up the pyramid, from your blue collar, your mid-class, white collar, executives. It opens everything up. It's like the perfect analogy for in all of America is manufacturing. And today I've got someone who is vastly knowledgeable in manufacturing. How you doing, Jason?
Doing well. How are you, Tony?
Man, I'm doing great. How is everything over in Alabama?
Going great. Had a nice warm front, and now we're back in Chile again. So
I tell you, it's southern weather on the shoulder months is like, it's just schizophrenic. It just doesn't even know what it doesn't know what it wants to be. So look, I wouldn't leave you out of here. Look at this. We got your little banner right here.
hey, there we go.
Listen, I mean, you're big time safety expert, running his own business. We're gonna have lots of questions for you today. I even have a little ticker for you down there in the bottom.
Nice.
So we got a lot to go
Great.
over today. First of all, how did you end up in the world of safety? I think there's lots of careers out there that people don't necessarily wake up and say, I want to do this, but for something happens and it just hits them like, hey, I'm really good at this. I want to keep doing it.
You know, I think for me, I've always been in the manufacturing and the industrial, different aspects of it. And, funny story, initially, by trade, I was an electrician, trade school, the whole nine. But there was always a connection with the safety, doing things the right way, following through, and understanding why you do it a certain way. But for me, it was more important. It was the relationships and generally caring about people. And as time went on, that became more important to me. Of helping people, caring about people, having those relationships than it did being a electrician. So I've slowly made that transition into safety.
Well, and probably that's one of the number one feelings I get. That's the best way to put it, is a feeling, or an empathetic response to the working class is you want them to go home with all five fingers, five toes, and everything else. Um,
100%.
we've got a huge base of manufacturing, at Timpl. We probably have 10 or more branches in the Southeast, Texas, out in California. We're growing. We've got a pretty good strategy. And as I talk to our branch managers, the people who are really on the front lines, working with the clients, helping the staffing coordinators attract people to go to work in these manufacturing sites, literally, that's one of the first things that they talk about is the relationship that they develop with everyone that they're placing to work, and they have their best interests at heart. And safety ends up being like right at the very tippy top of all of that. Like everything we do is based around that. So when I discovered that, we've got safety consultants, people who have started their own businesses to get out and, advise and help other companies, I thought you'd be the perfect guy to come down, and just kind of chat with us a little bit about everything that you're seeing in manufacturing. Now, before we get into that, you work in a couple different niche areas, do you not? Which are
Oh,
the areas that that you personally specialize in?
uh, personally specialized. Have a strong stance in the mining industry and in the heavy industrial, working with contractors. That's probably where I cut my teeth, if you say, and that's where I hang out the most. But my career has been in general contracting and manufacturing. So the mining side is what gave me a lot of the building the relationships and putting that strong focus on safety.
Yeah, that's not an area that we've gotten into mining. I would imagine the insurance is probably through the roof for that.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely.
Sending workers down below, and probably why you have all those hard hats.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. So the hard hats behind me are, there's a few. I've got a few more over here sitting in a pile, but those are from different stages of actually my career, in different areas and different mine sites. So some of those are, the white one is strictly a safety management. That was a safety personnel. That was actually manufacturing contractor. We worked in a lot of processing facilities. The yellow is from my electrical days, and the brown, it was probably, I believe, my first mining hard hat that I have. So I've kind of held on to those for the years.
well, I'm as taking a closer look, I don't see any major cracks in them. So, um,
That's a
knock
good
on
thing.
wood.
That's a good thing.
You'll have to have another excuse for whatever dumb decisions are made. You can't say it landed on your head. And
Yeah,
that's
there it is.
that
I've
was
had
the
I've had my share. You get up high enough in these industries where the wind catches it the right way, and the hard hat does what it wants to, and you have to walk down to the bottom of the tower and pick up your hard hat. Unfortunately, those hard hats really don't work well, and I don't have those anymore. You get a new one after that.
well, you probably get a lot of people, a lot of snickers, when you're
Oh yeah, you hear it all the
traversing
way down,
down.
all the way down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I bet. I bet. So what I mean, do you agree with me in that in my opening segment there, that for America to be strong, we've got to have a strong manufacturing base. To have a strong manufacturing base, you have to have well-educated companies that understand the importance of safety and safety kind of culture, if you will, kind of built in.
Yeah, I like that word you use right there, the culture. I agree with you 100% on, it's who we are as Americans. The manufacturing is what we've done well, really well for years. We made a shift through that, but building a culture where safety is not an afterthought. It's the number one thing that a general production or entry level employee actually thinks about on the regular.
Okay, so this is what I want to talk about is how do you even go about establishing a culture of safety?
So for me, establishing a culture of safety, I know it sounds very simple, but it's really building relationships early on. Um, I think from my career, I found a lot of times that building that culture comes from actually, putting boots on the ground, if you will, and
Yeah.
having the conversations with people who are doing the actual work, talking to them and figure out what's the shortcomings, what's the hazards, what's the things that they're concerned with, and creating an open dialogue to where they feel comfortable coming to you when they have questions or even when they've had an incident. That's building a safety culture where you're not just talking about it, you're actually fulfilling it. I think for me is, taking the stigma away from safety to where it's oh, let's go have a conversation. Let's let safety know what's going on.
Yeah, you just said something there, the stigma. Yes, I'm the head of marketing. However, sometimes I put on a safety hat, the proverbial safety hat.
Hmm.
And, we can be growing really fast. I might be deployed to another city. I've done this where, I've been trained quite a bit. I've spent a lot of time on, in manufacturing plants. So, I load up with my PPE, my steel toe shoes, and I'll do a safety walk. And, you get right down to see exactly what the person is doing on the machine, where are the challenges, where are the pitfalls, and you've got to get to the point where they don't feel like they're being audited, right? Because
Yes.
there's a stigma like, oh God,
Yes.
here come the safety people again. Quick, put your glasses on, zip up your vest, rather than, hey, let's talk because I've noticed blah blah blah. We've got this problem, and that's really, I think, the hardest part is getting that safety culture established inside of a company, and that's, I've seen that firsthand.
Well, establishing that culture, when you're actually having those conversations, and I like how you said that, making it feel where it's not just an audit to what they're doing. Because the people running the equipment, running the machines, they have their own lives. They have things going on as well, and you don't want to be a distraction or another. I mean, a burden on their life. I used to, when I first got into safety and running Kelly Safety, I always had a list. I always said that I want to be the safety manager that I always wanted, and that was having relationships, coming up and having a conversation, and asking somebody, how does this work? Do you always do it this way? Is there is there a reason why we do it this way? I found out genuinely having conversations and understanding what someone does every day works so much better than going, hey, you're not supposed to do that. You went through training. You're supposed to do it this way. Never in my career has anybody responded well to that.
I mean, that's just human nature.
Yeah.
Um, and with the expansion of, I think, manufacturing, with the expansion of new companies from other countries moving into America to avoid, tariffs. They want to start building here. One of the challenges that I have seen with some of the foreign businesses that come in, they're used to taking shortcuts. Have you seen this?
I have. I've seen both sides. I've seen a couple times where some facilities are more, they're more hard nosed on their safety, which is great. At
Mm.
times, there is a cultural divide or misunderstanding because there's been an American way of how we've done things and how now this company wants to do it a certain way. Um, but with the companies that are new here that take shortcuts, I think that's where you get that phrase, stop work authority, where everybody has the ability to speak up. That comes from having those relationships and giving every individual the ability to speak up and say, "Hey, this doesn't seem quite right. Hey, I don't think I should do this."
What would that look like? I mean, imagine you're an hourly worker. You look around you, you're in a multi billion dollar, $1 million. Some of these approach $1 billion.
Mhm.
Production facilities, and you're going to be the one that has the stop work authority.
Yeah, 100%. I know it
What does that
sounds
look like? What does that look to talk to me like? What happens in that situation?
okay. I mean, if you're the hourly worker, you're working on a piece of equipment, you're operating a piece of equipment, and you've noticed the guard is missing, or this guard is at times just doesn't stay attached as it should. You're building. It goes back to building a culture of giving the worker a voice to speak up for safety and allowing them to feel safe, and be confident that, hey, if they see an incident, they speak up, they say something. But you can't just throw that in. Hey, everybody has stop work authority. Everybody can speak up. You have to actually practice that. You can't punish people when they have an incident. So it is, how can I say it? Enabling people to have the power to speak up for safety. Speak up for themselves. That's
Yeah.
that's how that comes together.
Yeah, it's almost like you almost need like whistleblower protection, because you're
Yeah.
kind of blowing the whistle on the manufacturing site and saying, look, this is not right. By the way, every 15, 20 minutes when a new product rolls out, there's X amount of revenue associated with it and cost, and you're just shutting that whole thing down. But what's the flip side, Jason? What happens, if there's an incident? Like what happens after that?
See, that's if you don't give people the ability to speak up, whistleblower, like you said, or stop work authority, then they start ignoring this. Then they start ignoring incidents because then they don't feel like it's going to change. They don't feel like it's going to be fixed, or they feel like, hey, I may put my job in jeopardy by speaking up. And then when those things start happening, it starts adding up. And then those people, not because they want to, but almost because they've been forced to, they start taking shortcuts. And then they start ignoring incidents, and then they don't. And then they stop reporting incidents, and it just snowballs into this whole fear. And then now you're into the world of incident rates, EMRs, going to the hospital, going to urgent care, and now it's a whole nother scenario you're dealing with.
That's right. Um, have you had to deal with OSHA on site, or have you ever been called in to right a situation because of OSHA? Like, okay, we need to bring an expert in now to help us kind of clean things up.
Yeah, I've had my share of giving an independent of, hey, what happened here? How, what was the root cause analysis? A lot of times when you call in someone like myself, it's a independent third party review of, let's just be honest, where did things go wrong? What could we have done better? Was this preventable? And there's always an argument back and forth if something's preventable, but majority of the time the incidents were preventable. So we had a situation several years ago where a steam valve was not locked out as it should be. It was not locked and blocked, and there were some questions about the training, and there was questions of like, why did this happen? So yeah, I've seen the OSHA side of that as well as the MSHA side of that.
All right. So you've just touched on something, and I was kind of hoping we would get into this because there's going to be a large segment of our audience that that understands lockout, blockout, or lockout, tag out. These different techniques, safeguards that are put in place across manufacturing. Now, I personally have never, worked in a setting where I had to go through that procedure. I've only seen it, in a safety walk. So I'm not trying to put myself up here as someone who's been operating a machine. I know you've seen a lot of lockout tag out, and I know there's, if you ever hear a story about lockout tag out, they don't end good, and we don't
No,
want to go down that road.
no.
But educate people. What is lockout tag out? Why is it in place? What kind of machinery are you putting it on? And just kind of walk us through not what are you putting it on, but what is the what qualifies to that you have to have a machine with this kind of safeguard.
So, the easy thing for a lot of people for the lockout, tag out, and I'd like to add it's, lockout, tag out, try out, because after we lock it, we want to try it to make sure it's de energized. Uh, a lot of times people think of just the electrical portion of, locking out a circuit breaker, locking out a disconnect, locking out a drive to prevent it from operating, prevent a piece of equipment from starting, to prevent a belt from starting or a shear from starting, so you can actually perform maintenance, or you can do preventive maintenance and cleaning, housekeeping, greasing, all those things. But it also goes into pneumatics, hydraulics, and just blocking equipment, which would be steam valves, water valves, things along those nature.
Hmm. Well, like you said, I know you've seen scenarios where it hasn't necessarily worked out well. Um, what is the? Can you walk us through what's a typical procedure? Start of shift or end of shift, and you're coming up to a piece of equipment that has lockout, tag out procedures.
So we'll go through a scenario of, hey, this machine needs to be serviced, and it is your responsibility to, let's say, grease the fittings, but there are fittings there that you can't access safely while the machine is running. So you would de-energize the machine, and you would, which most likely we'll say it's electrically, you would throw the disconnect, turn off the power, place your lock and tag on it that is specifically to you, and then attempt to start the machine. That way you have it's locked and tagged, you've locked it out and you've tried it out. Now you can service the machine or you can repair the machine. Uh, that would be how you would operate it, and you perform your routine maintenance and then reverse the process and start it back up. Now, if you have a situation where it's hey, this machine is out of service, there is a major safety issue here, I'm locking it out because I don't feel safe. Well, you are the gatekeeper, if you will. You hold the keys. That is your key, that is your lock. No one else can take that lock off except for you. So at the end of the shift, if second shift is coming around, they also need to put a lock on it because they are responsible for it while they are there. So it is better to see multiple locks on a piece of equipment than no locks on a piece of equipment. So that's how that whole process works from start to finish.
Yeah. So that next shift, they basically, you know, they are in agreement with you.
Yeah, you never assume that the next person, oh, they knew what was going on. because we're all human. We all make mistakes. We all have our own lives outside of work. So to protect the person before you and to protect yourself so everyone goes home the way we left, you also lock it out. And you also hold your key. And then at shift change, that's how that happens.
Mm-hmm. So when you're not busy doing your day job, I understand you're getting ready. You're starting your own podcast, or do you have
Yes,
something
sir.
in the works?
Yes, it's in the works now. If you care, we talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'm curious because
All right. So
not many safety guys I talk to have kind of gone to the lengths that you have to present themselves.
hey man,
What's going on?
as I told you, I'm grateful for the opportunity. So it's called Save the Hard Hats. And it all comes from being in these industries my entire life, my adult life, and having relatives that worked in manufacturing, industrial, mining, and hearing all these stories. And, the greatest line I heard as of late in safety was, hey, what's my job? Oh, is it to keep this guy safe, to make sure this doesn't happen? Those are all great responses. But at the end of the day, my job is to save the stories, to keep the stories alive. Because as long as you're alive, we can keep telling the stories, good, bad. If we learn something from it, if it's just funny, those stories stay alive. So I watched older generations fade away, and now I'm the person telling their story to another generation. And I couldn't think of a better way in this modern era to preserve those stories than with Save the Hard Hat. So that's the goal, to take people from manufacturing, you know, random industrial, commercial, and mining, and just let them tell their stories. Hopefully we get to laugh, we get the good, the bad, but tying it all back to safety and going, hey, what went wrong? How can we do it better? So because all
Well,
these stories have a sketchy portion of the story,
oh,
unfortunately.
I know, and if I know if you're thinking, come on, Tony, ask the question. I don't want to listen. I don't want to know because I already know. I mean, I already know, and um, this is a family show.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't
there's
want.
hey, blood and sweat and tears built manufacturing, blue collar work, man. It's not going to
Yes,
change now.
there's it hasn't changed. It
No.
absolutely hasn't changed. I'm curious, uh, watching what Elon Musk has done with the Optimus robot. Have you seen some of the progress this has made? What do you think's going to happen in manufacturing when we see these on the floor? What do you think?
You know, I've seen a little bit of it, and and I've even other tech gurus with their ability with robots and AI. As much as for technology of how intrigued I am of the science and how it all comes together, there is a part of me that makes me go, you know, how much longer do do we have left as the a starter position in a manufacturing where, hey, I came in on the floor as a press operator and worked my way up. So that does trouble me at times. I think about it pretty often. I know there's some parts of manufacturing that will ultimately never be replaced, but it's getting eerily close, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think he said at scale it will be maybe $20,000, to purchase one. But
Yeah,
I think
but
if you're
what is $20,000 when
no,
it's
that's my point.
yeah.
No, that's exactly my point. I mean, part of me, I kind of feel like I'm in a Jetsons, episode where it'd be kind of cool, like,
Mhm.
hey, it's raining, and I tell my Optimist to go, take the dog out, take the trash out,
Yeah.
and as soon as it dries out, cut the grass for me. I mean, that is kind of cool because that would like free me up. But when we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar manufacturer who uses 200, 300 people on the floor, they can drop, $8 million
Mhm.
and bring in a workforce.
Yeah, and that's it's hard to I mean,
I know.
yeah.
This is why I asked you because it's like, what do we think is going to happen? Like you just said, that first level of introductory work, may go away. I think, and we've written about this and we've blogged about it quite a bit. People need to go to trade schools. You've got to elevate yourself beyond general labor and get a little more, more technical.
I mean, I will beat the drum for the trade schools as long as I have breath in my lungs. It has never hurt or hindered anybody to learn a trade, and even if they continue to go into college and do something else, it's always been beneficial for anyone I've ever met. But to me, everybody has to start somewhere. And that opportunity of running a shear, getting your toes in the water in manufacturing, maybe that plants the seed of, hey, I want to work in maintenance. I want to work on PLCs, or hey, I want to be a fabricator. I think that's what troubles me, because then, that entry level that's always been there for some people would be gone. And you don't even know if you want to get into maintenance. You don't even know if you want to get in manufacturing. I've known a lot of people to go straight into maintenance from learning a trade. And if they, for example, go work in a steel mill, and they realize that steel mills are not, they're not, nice air conditioner places in the summertime, they change their mind pretty quick, and and go
Yeah,
in a
they
different
do.
direction.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I don't know the future on that one. I don't, but I'm sure this level of fear existed, back 100 years ago. Every time there's a leap, in terms of technology, there does seem to be that, disruption period.
Mhm.
Then it settles, and then you have a new kind of class, a new workforce that develops. And
You know,
that's really where we're at with optimists. I mean, we're not far.
no, we're not. And if I had to be, emotions removed and just give a blunt answer, I possibility of cutting a workforce in half, it's realistic, because there was a time where we talk about, hey, we had heavy equipment, when backhoes and mini X's came along, we no longer had to shovel. You no longer had to shovel and dig that ditch. You could run a piece of equipment and do it in half the time. And the piece of equipment didn't need brakes, didn't need insurance, didn't get thirsty. It just didn't need lunch. It just kept going. So you could probably say early on it could reduce that workforce, 25%, 50%, but you'll still have the human element, for at least for a time being.
And this is where we kind of go back to the trade school, is that the the jobs in the future have to be focused around robotics. It
100%.
just does.
100%.
And so I think that's where we're going to see. And then, how do you create a safe environment, when you've got robots? I mean, it's got we're going to have a whole new level of guidance that's out there. A lot of interesting things coming down the pike. All right, Jason. So let me ask you this. What is the best way for people to connect with you, particularly if they're running a plant, mining operation, and they need safety expertise and guidance? What's the best way for them to reach out?
You can find me at kellysafety.com. You can find me on socials at kellysafety, and or info at kellysafety.com. I've got a whole online training platform for OSHA, MSHA, entry level. It's all right there online on demand for you guys.
That's awesome. Well, I look forward to talking to you more and checking out this podcast. Save the Hard Hats. You have an ETA on this thing?
Well,
I mean, you got the setup now. Come
I
on. What
mean,
what's
I
what are
got
we waiting on?
I got to stack a few more hard hats on this wall. I've got a couple that they deserve some respect up there, but I'm looking within the next 30 days. That's the goal. I've got
Attaboy.
I put out feelers and so to some guys who I already know some of the stories they've told me, and I said we should share this story with everybody.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we'll get the links for it, and we'll update the episode. We'll update it with links to your show. We'll put it in there for posterity's sake.
Sounds great.
Jason, it's great seeing you again, my man. I'm glad those hard hats have done their job on that big, thick head of yours.
Hey, you gotta protect it. You gotta protect the noggin. You gotta protect the noggin. I appreciate you, Tony, man. It's been a
All
great
right,
day.
my
Thank you.
man. We'll see you soon.
Appreciate it, bud. Thank you.